What's going on, guys? Today I was thinking about showing you guys something sweet, like some new knives I got in, like this freaking sweet model. But instead, I chose to do something different. Today we're going to go over every single Spyderco I have. I have actually a separate box of knives that are strictly Spyderco knives, which you can see a couple pictures of here, here, and here. We will be going over in no particular order, but I will do my best to tell you a little bit about each knife and maybe which one's my favorite, which it changes from day to day, so we'll see how I'm feeling today. Starting off with a couple budget models. The first is the budget flipping option of the Spyderco Emphasis. Now, this is like a $50 or $60 model, 8CR13, G10. Really comfortable in hand. This really does give you the Spyderco experience when you're holding this. And I think you would be happy if you're stuck in the 100 or less range or choose to be there, whatever the case, with something like this. It is a hard use, heavy duty knife, and it brings all the Spyderco ergonomics and slicey factors to the table that all of us know and love. But there's more. This one is the Spyderco Persistence. This happens to be the Spyderco Tenacious's little brother. Speaking of Tenaciouses, here we go. So, as you can see, this is the Tenacious little brother. And I genuinely love this knife. This might be my favorite budget Spyderco option. Again, 8CR13 MOV, but, you know, for 50, 60 bucks coming from Spyderco, that's not too bad. Any other company, you're like, oh, it's garbage, but Spyderco, for some reason, we're giving them a pass for years and years and years. The action on this is pretty decent, a little strong on the D10 side, a little bit, if I were to tune it up, I could probably get it pretty good. But this is a knife that you could toss to your buddy across the table and not really care. One of the oldest knives that I have in my collection is the Spyderco Tenacious. I had both the serrated and non-serrated versions, and I actually carried both at one point in time. I got rid of the straight edge, I actually gave it to a friend, and I kept the serrated as like just more of a memory. And I do use this outside because this is the only serrated knife that I own, and it's got the patented Spyderco serrations on it. So it's not a bad knife, not a bad knife at all. The Tenacious is actually, in my opinion, pretty darn good for under $100 considering it's Spyderco. If it was, again, any other brand, you'd be like, hell no. But with Spyderco, I'll take it. Now we're going to get into everything else I own, and I will probably try to start from my least favorite and move from there. So first on the list is one that I may or may not be keeping. This has no reason to be my least favorite. This is a Spyderco Spy Opera. I just don't carry it. I genuinely enjoy it. They did so much cool stuff. This is made in their Italian factory, and everything is like, all these edges are rounded off. Check this out. The spine is crowned, and it matches this back lock right here. This is all crowned too. It's pretty damn cool. Very, very thin knife, very, very thin behind the edge. Great slicer. This is one of those knives that's kind of gentlemanly, but you can carry it on an everyday basis, and I think it'll get most of your generic needs done. This is a Spyderco Spy Opera, probably one of my least favorite of my less budget options. Next on the list is a Frankenstein and a project that has never really fulfilled itself. That is this very dirty Spyderco cue ball. I really wanted to love this knife, but the ceramic ball trying to mimic what the Manix does just doesn't do it well, and the access to it is even worse. Worse yet, I almost paid shaman money for this from the website. I should have never. But all in all, it's kind of cool. You can see if they were to tweak this and do this right, this would be such a fantastic knife. Ergonomically, this cool little worn clip blade. And then this freaking lock here, it's cool, but it's really hard. It's really hard to get to. You can see I very rudimentarily tried to open this up and give myself more access to it, and it still is just, The Spyderco cue ball, Now we're already getting into knives that it's hard for me to distinguish which one's my least favorite, so we're just gonna start grabbing them. This is the Spyderco Canis. I did a review on this, and I really didn't give it enough justice. Once I got it in again, because I just wanted a Wharncliffe Spyderco, compression lock and all that jazz, I genuinely really enjoy this knife. I haven't really carried it that much, again, because I have other stuff kind of going in and out of my pocket. But this model's pretty sweet, and it has this really nice aggressive hollow grind going on there. Ergonomically pretty darn sound, and as we know, it's meant for this position right here, as it is a defensive knife. I forgot who actually designed this. So you can go back and check my review for that if you were that curious. But all in all, made in Taichung, Taiwan. Very, very good. Very, very high quality. That does have this G10 carbon fiber laminate, which is part of the reason I got rid of the original, but I'm kind of starting to give it a pass. I don't mind it as much. Speaking of the carbon fiber G10 laminate, let's talk about the Spyderco Amalgam. Now, this is one of those beast mode Spydercos that I think is incredible. This is kind of boring, right? This blade shape is kind of like, and it's kind of an ugly knife, but so are all Spydercos, but it's this massive honker, and for reference sake, here's the full-size tenacious. This is how large the Amalgam actually is. It's a pretty large knife. You got that full flat grind in typical Spyderco fashion, no leaf-shaped blade this time, more of a spear point, and ergonomically this is beast mode. Action on it's great. You do have to, and I say have to, remove that damn flipper. I did do a flipper delete on this because when you're holding this, it will just bash into your finger each and every time, which was really, really frustrating. So once I got rid of that, it's just now amazing. I mean, the action on it's great. It's an underused gem in my collection, at least in my opinion. Next on the list is somebody else's user that I got my hands on and really, really enjoy. This is the Spyderco PPT. Now, one reason that I don't carry this enough is it is very, very thick. This is a very thick knife, and once again, let's reference back to the tenacious. As you can see here, right there, it's thicker than the tenacious, and the tenacious isn't entirely too thick, but it's just kind of a, And then this rock pattern on the scales I wasn't too much of a fan of, and you can't really change out the pocket clip, so it's like, okay, but then you open it and you're like, that's a cool blade shape. Oh man, this is actually pretty comfy in hand. This is a titanium frame lock, subframe lock, what? So all in all, the Spyderco PPT is a really, really cool, and I'm keeping it because they don't sell it anymore. I just don't know how much I'm going to use it with all the other freaking Spydercos I have. Speaking of which, let's get to the next one. Next on the list is my Spyderco Smock. Absolutely love the Smock. This is the Smock in particular in M4 with the coated blade. These are titanium scales, probably from Raylight. We do have an REK pocket clip on here, which just makes it such... This thing is actually really ergonomic for being so rectangular. Action, as we know from the Smock, pretty darn awesome. I still do have that second detent in there, but it doesn't cause me any issue. I genuinely love this knife. So it's kind of like, why would you carry the Spyderco PPT when you have the Spyderco Smock? That's kind of where some of that thought process comes from. All in all, really cool knife. Doesn't see enough action in my pocket just because I have so many, but this is one of those knives that could be a one and done. It is just absolutely phenomenal, and she's gorgeous. Next on the list is a new acquisition that I do have plans for. This is the Spyderco Manix 2 in 52-100 blade steel. Now, I have one of my favorite Spydercos. It may be my number one, just depending on the day you ask me. That is my Spyderco Manix 2 in Rex 45. This is particular with the skinny scales from Rock Scale Designs. Freaking love this guy. Never heard of 52-100 steel, so I had to get my hands on that, and the action came in phenomenal. Too bad everything is going to get changed out eventually. But you can see the differences here between the skinny scales and the non-skinny scales. As you can see, the regular Manix has this little puff right here, whereas this one does not. You don't have that little puff out right there. So I think that I'm going to keep this one the regular Manix, because in hand, this feels good. In hand, this feels good. I'm not quite sure which I like better. It's just kind of cool to have both. So we're probably going to upgrade this one to have probably some Rock Scale Design scales on there. We'll do a titanium ball cage, all that. Being that it's the only Spyderco I own doubles of, yeah, this might be one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites being the Spyderco Gayle Bradley 2. This is just such a good all-around user knife. You constantly hear over and over for a one and done knife. Knees Knives just did a one and done video, right? You can go check that out. He picked a bunch of knives that could be one and dones, and the Gayle Bradley 2 was on there, the Manix 2 was on there, the Para 2 and 3 were on there, and all for good reasons. These are just such good knives. And this one in particular, yeah, the detent kind of sucks, but ergonomically, it is a very neutral ergonomic, unlike most Spydercos. The blade shape is so damn useful, and you have this really, really nice semi-aggressive hollow grind going on here, giving you a pretty narrow behind the edge. Coming in an M4 blade steel, so you're gonna get some decent toughness and decent corrosion, or decent toughness and decent edge retention there. No corrosion resistance, this will corrode on you. But this is a knife that makes it into my pocket quite frequently, and rightfully so. Next on the list, probably my most carried Spyderco by default, the Spyderco Techno 2. Reason that this is probably the most carried is I only have a few fifth pocket knives, and this is my favorite fifth pocket knife. This awesome sheep's foot style blade, I was going to call it a Warncliffe, is pretty darn good, and this is Taichung Taiwan design, this titanium frame lock. The action on it's pretty darn good for Spyderco on titanium frame lock. The steel from Taichung Taiwan, I can tell you, it has this really, really cool gloss finish, and when you sharpen this, it takes such a nasty edge, guys. This is coming in CTX XHP blade steel, which is like D2 that's corrosion resistant basically, so decent edge retention, decent corrosion resistance, a little bit of toughness, not as much as some, but this is a knife that, if you're being realistic with yourself, can take on damn near anything you throw at it, and then some. My only recommendation when you get this is to change out that pocket clip. I believe I got this from Rip's Garage Tech, if I'm not mistaken. The wire pocket clip on this model in particular creates such a nasty hotspot, it sucks. Once I switched over to this, it just got a million times better. Spyderco Techno 2, pretty much my most carried Spyderco. One of my newest acquisitions, this is a Spyderco PM3 or Para 3 in S30V. Wait a second, that's not the Para 3. This is the Para 3. So why does this look so damn similar, but there's something slightly off about it? They are both compression locks. Okay. Both have that and both have that. What's going on here? This is actually a Sage 5. I got this off of Reddit. This dude did a bunch of different things to this, I believe. We got some micarta scales going on here that he ended up dying. He obviously changed the blade shape. This was a true leaf-shaped blade. Now it's coming out kind of like the Para 3, but you can obviously see some of the differences as well. It doesn't ramp up as high, etc. It's a little bit more narrow in the neck, which is why I didn't like it in the first review that I gave it. But having this in hand, this feels like a working knife, guys. This is one of those knives that once you throw those micarta scales on there, oh man, this is gonna get the job done. I gave this a little bit of a tune-up job. I can't get it to completely drop shut, but it's coming close. You can if you get it on a good day. Let's see here. Yeah, it's something about it. It just likes to mess with me just when I got it right before it doesn't want to do it. But my Para 3. So, all in all, the Sage 5, pretty darn cool. Now let's talk about the Para 3 that we have on the table, because the Para 3 is pretty awesome as well. This is the S45 VN version, and actually I bought this when it was a sprint run before they did it. Now it's like all of a sudden it's all over the place. Once again, the REK pocket clip. We do have these skinny rock scale designs on it again, and oh man, this thing is probably one of the most useful in size and function, everything, knives that you can ever buy. The Para 3 is such just a really good freaking knife, and I adore this knife. I am so happy that I changed my mind on it from the initial impressions and went out, got another one, upgraded it, and even did my own acid etch and stuff going on here. Not sure what that scrape is from. I did do a tumble finish, but it kind of turned out goofy. All in all, love the Para 3. Second to last on the list is another new acquisition that kind of ashamed of myself for not checking out, and even Jake from Ohio State was like, bro, you gotta feel this. This is the Native 5, and in particular the Native 5 in S90V, and oh man, this is like the ultimate Para 3. Here's the Para 3 in size. The Native 5 is a little bit thinner. Basically, this is a bug out with how thick this guy actually isn't. See right here. That's how thick this guy actually isn't. The S90V blade steel coming from Spyderco I trust, and I'm very excited to get to know. Made in USA, so that's really cool. And then the swedge up here, which is unlike most Spydercos, looks actually really good. All in all, this knife is so nice, and then just the clicks and clacks of the backlock really make you enjoy the backlock. Now, I did have a Native Chief at one point in time and absolutely loved it, but that blade was so kind of dainty for being so large, I felt like I was gonna break it anytime I was going to use it. And at one point in time, I found myself using it just to cut electrical tape at work off of some fittings, and I was just terrified that I was gonna break it, and I couldn't find my other knife. I usually carry a second one for that reason. So I ended up letting it go, because if I'm scared to use it, I don't want it. And now that we got the Native 5, man, is this thing cool. This carbon fiber is actually really nice. It almost has this sunburst texture to it. Not sure if the camera can pick that up. And I did change out the pocket clip. This is a pocket clip from AliExpress. It's a titanium pocket clip that you can go get for like 20 bucks. Dirt freaking cheap, and they also have a sunburst pattern one. I have a couple of them, didn't like them at first, and I couldn't figure out why. It's actually because the screw holes aren't opened up enough for most of the button head screws that Spydercos come with, and therefore I couldn't get enough depth out of this. But if you open those holes up enough, or find screws with just a slightly off on the head, you can actually get them in there and get it on fine, and it's a pretty cool pocket clip, you know, a little titanium guy. For 20 bucks, you can't beat it, considering those REK pocket clips are like 80. Like, I'd still pay it, but it kind of hurts you in the soul just to pay 80 bucks for a freaking pocket clip, right? The Native 5, this guy is fantastic. Now, if you were to ask me before we get to the last one, would I ever get rid of any of the Spydercos I currently have? I'm not gonna say no, but I'm gonna tell you, I'm really enjoying kind of collecting them. Even the Spy Opera, which I said earlier, I might not keep forever, you know, but I'm really enjoying collecting Spydercos. And it's not, like the Manix 2 I have 2 of, but I don't need multiples of the different sprint runs. Spyderco is by far and large my favorite brand. And it's one of those that it was not originally that way. But now that I have so many and fallen in love with so many, it's proving itself time and time again that they are my favorite knife. And one of my favorites, if not the coup de grace for me of Spyderco, is the PM2. This is the PM2 in crew wear. This is actually the Crew Carta PM2. Hey, here's my other clip that I got from AliExpress. There's that sunburst pattern I was talking about. This one came with the full liners, which kind of sucked, because if I were to open this up and show you the freaking job I did to these liners, you'd be like, how is that thing working? But it's functioning just fine. I actually took a belt sander and made it fit into these titanium scales that I got in a trade before I realized there was full liners. This is the REK backspacer, which I highly recommend. That was also on my Para 3. And you can see it takes the place of your lanyard tube. It doesn't rattle, it doesn't do any of that jazz, and it sits in there real nice, looks classy, gives you a backspacer that looks nice, adds a little bit of solidity to the knife, and when you take it apart, you don't have to fight it like the regular lanyard tubes. But the Para 2, I don't really need to go over why this is just such a good knife. Anytime my action's good, I always check to make sure there's no back and forth. It's just a great knife. And then when you add the contouring to it with these titanium Lotus scales, it's incredible. I'm looking at some Met & Boss Zerk scales for this, and I don't want to be disappointed with the non-contouring, because I'm getting so used to the contouring of this knife. The ergos on this are so good. The blade shape is just so damn functional. It's just the right size to get done many slicing tests. So damn slicey. You guys already know the PM2. I don't need to drone on about it, but this is probably one of my favorites. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is my entire Spyderco collection. Things that I have on the list to get is another Shaman, just because we're collecting them. It's not my favorite. I know you guys are going to say, what the hell? But I'm going to get a Shaman just because we're kind of doing the Spyderco thing. Other than that, I don't really have too many that are on my radar as far as ones that I need to get or want to get. And to kind of round out the collection, maybe experience a Sleesh Bowie, maybe a Paysan if I can get my hands on one, and maybe another Drunken, but again, that's pretty pricey for the range of Spydercos that I'm looking at. All 17 of these knives are fantastic, and it is very difficult to say that about any other brand in existence. Even their budget lineup is fantastic. So if you're not a Spyderco fanboy, I'm sorry that you just sat through this, or you probably didn't even make it to this point. But if you are a Spyderco fanboy, you know what I'm talking about. At first glance, they're ugly as sin. But then once you get to know them, ooh, watch out. They are such a fantastic tool. Hope this was entertaining. Hope you guys had a little bit of fun. In the comments below, why don't you let me know what your favorite Spyderco is? Not limited to this, not limited to my collection, but what is your favorite overall Spyderco? Oh, one more that I really want to get my hands on that I probably never will, the Spyderco Magnitude. Desperately want to feel one of those. Have a great day.